Okay. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you and nice to see you at the second day of conference that devoted to promotion of Polish experience of decentralization and local authorities modernization. We are realizing within the project Direction and Efficient State, which is co-financed by Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Poland, together with our partner from Georgia, the Georgian Institute of Politics. And today we are continuing to talk about Polish decentralization and some issues, challenges, and obstacles in order to receive, in order to gain and achieve some decentralization at the different levels of authorities. Well, today we are going to present some parts of our guidebook that we are going to publish in December. We are going to publish online, and also we will present some infographics on Polish decentralization experience. Before we start, I would encourage all participants of the conferences and stakeholders to participate in the discussion, ask questions and comment what we are going to present. And I think we have now a transmission in Facebook, and we are also sharing this transmission at CASE Facebook, so you can easily ask questions here in the Zoom and also at Facebook. Well, I would like to remind to all speakers that we have quite tight time frame, so I would encourage you to stick to the schedule we established at the very beginning. I just briefly remind you that we have, I think, 1.5 hours to present Polish and Georgian experience in decentralization. Then we will have a 10 minutes break, and then I will give a floor to local stakeholders to comment and provide some feedback on materials we presented, and then we'll have a session of questions and answers. So I would like to give a word to all speakers, and I start with myself. My name is Stanislav Bieliei, and I'm project manager and researcher at CASE, Central for Social and Economic Research from Warsaw, Poland. And Agnieszka?
Yes, good afternoon to everyone in Georgia. My name is Agnieszka Kulesa. I'm the economist at CASE, but I'm also a political scientist, and I'm very happy that I was able and given this opportunity to contribute to the project, which is really extremely interesting. Thank you.
Okay, and it's time for our partners from Georgia. Salome, maybe first.
Okay, so I am Salome Kandelaki, I'm a project coordinator at Georgian Institute of Politics. I'm a PhD student at Bieliei State University in political science. So, that's it from my side.
Thank you very much. Kwanza?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm Kwanza Echkiti, project coordinator at Georgian Institute of Politics. And along with Salome, I had the pleasure of working on Georgia's report on decentralization that we will present today, and I'm really excited for all your questions and feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And maybe because I see that we have 21 participants, and maybe some of stakeholders would like to introduce yourself. I see that, for example, we have Gia Hubua. Sorry if I'm wrong with pronunciation of your surname. Could you just introduce yourself? Sorry, you are on mute. Sorry, we don't hear you. Could you mute on yourself? Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Gia Hubua from Tbilisi State University. I'm a professor at the TSU. I'm also a Berlin-Steinmeier professor, and I'm the president also of the university. So I would like to I'm very glad that I have been given this opportunity to participate in this project. I would like to thank Vanta personally and also Salome for the interview that they took from me, and I would like to thank also the government of Poland to support this project. We have especially good collaboration with Poland, and I talked yesterday, this is maybe a bit of a deviation from the subject, but I talked Jan Marecki, my colleague from Warsaw University, together with whom in 2007 in Tbilisi State University, we opened together Poland Auditorium the Research Center, and I'm really glad that we collaborate also in this direction. And I believe that it will be very beneficial for Georgia in the process of democratization.
Thank you very much. Nice to hear that you also know Jan Malicki, because I'm graduated from the institute that is led by Jan Malicki. Yeah. Okay. Well, we don't have a lot of time. It's 20 past of our schedule. Well, I would propose to start with presenting some insights and some findings on Polish decentralization. And I give a floor to Agnieszka.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. I will just start my presentation, if you allow me. Today, I will present you a short overview of the history of the re-establishment of local government in Poland. And I will also be talking very briefly about the issue of financing public government units in Poland and the issue of providing by them relevant public services. This presentation will be followed by a presentation by Stas, which will be a complementary one to this one. So starting with a bit of history. This year in Poland, actually, we celebrated something despite COVID. We celebrated the 30th anniversary of the reconstitution of the local government in Poland. The first local elections after the period of socialism were held in May in 1990. The responsible body for preparations to this event was the Senate, I mean the higher chamber of the Polish parliament, because as you might probably know, this was the only one freely elected body at the time. So they prepared the relevant laws, and they also took care of the preparations to these elections. And when it comes to 1990, just one level of the local government was reconstituted, re-established. It was the level of municipalities, the lowest one. Of course, at that time, we had also regions, voivodeships, but they were under the full control of the state central government. So this was the first stage of the reconstitution of the local government units in Poland. The next one took place 9 years later, when the counties, powiats, at the middle level of decentralization were established, as well as voivodeships. But this time, the power over voivodeships was shared between the central government and local government. And of course, the number of the voivodeships was limited to 16. In the meantime, Poland ratified the European Charter of Local Self-Government, and Poland, as one of the very few countries, ratified this convention in this charter in full. Also, whilst Poland was adopting the constitution, some constitutional guarantees regarding mainly this very basic level, the lowest level of decentralization, meaning municipalities, were introduced, and actually the whole 7th chapter is dedicated to local governments in Poland. We will get back to what Constitution says about local government later during the presentations. Here I listed also some most important acts, just to let you know that, of course, as the Constitution is the main legal document, there are also other acts which supplement legal provisions provided in the Constitution. I will not go into details when it comes to specific acts. You will be able to read about them in our guidebook, which will be published in December. So how does it look like at the moment? This system, which was established in 1999, is still valid in Poland. We have 3 levels of local self-government, and what is very important, the authority of local bodies is exercised on every level. Starting with voivodeships, and this must be said, as I said previously, the power is still shared between the central government and the one who is representing the central government on this level is the governor in Polish, vojevoda. Otherwise, when it comes to other levels, we have just local self-government in place. So when it comes to the Constitution, it says that all these units shall have constituting and executive bodies. And I will not describe the infographics. I think that you can see what these units are. The Constitution also says that the elections to the constituent bodies shall be general, equal, direct, and take place by secret ballot. It means that the citizens vote for the members to assembly and the councils. Since 2002, such electoral system is also in place when it comes to the mayor, also known as burmistrz, wójt, president, depending on the size of a given city. Since 2017, the elections are held every 5 years, but previously it was every 4 years. Now, swiftly going further to the issue of financing of local government units. This is quite obvious that they are the part of the public finance sector and that they should provide services, perform public tasks in a non-commercial manner. And this is why they should be financed mainly from the public resources. Again, what does the Constitution say about it? The first and the most important thing is that the local government units should be provided with a share in public revenue in accordance with their respective tasks. And what does it mean? It means that if you impose more tasks on the local government units, they should be also given more resources to meet the expectations and to fulfill their obligations, which is obviously not the case in every case, but I also think that this is not only the problem of Poland. Further, when it comes to the revenues, the constitution says that they should be comprised of own revenues and general and earmarked subsidies from the state budget. And now we will take a closer look at this. And now you can see a fancy infographic, which will be also made available to you after the conference. But let's take a look at the picture starting from the left-hand side. Here we have the main sources of income of local government units, and we can see that there are four main sources. Three of them are, just as I said, listed in the constitution. The first one is own income, and we are talking here about again very different sources. We are talking about fees, like for marketplace. Also, we have on the level of municipalities a dog fee. It means that dog owners, sometimes, not in case of every municipality, are requested or obliged to pay for having a dog. We are talking about taxes, of course, and also other sources of income depending on the level of decentralization that we are talking about. The next two sources are subsidies. The first one is the general subsidy, which, as the name might suggest, is universal. It means that every local government unit receives such a subsidy. The composition of that is quite complicated. Again, more information will be available in the guidebook. There are five main parts of it, but again, the composition depends on the level of the location of the local government unit. It means that, in short, it means that powiats don't receive general subsidies, which are composed the same way as general subsidies for example, municipalities. And one more remark, this one is non-refundable. The second type of subsidy is earmarked subsidy, of course, and it's not universal. Again, it means that not every local government unit receives such a subsidy. It's refundable, and it is dedicated to fund some concrete specified activities. The last source are other non-refundable funds, and in case of Poland, of course, the main component of those is the EU funding. Stas will be talking about it later during his presentation. Similarly to what is happening in Georgia, the basic instrument for budgetary management is the yearly adopted budget. The expenditures are, of course, very closely related with the scope of tasks that are imposed on local government units. But what I would like to highlight is that in Poland, there is a external and independent body for the control and the supervision over the budget, but also over the finances of local government units. It's a regional chamber of accounts, and this is the main supervising body. There are also, and it might be a bit different when comparing Poland to Georgia, there are also individual debt indexes. It means that every local government unit, with the use of very complicated formula, has its own limit on debt. And the rules on the General Reserve are visible here, so that I will not describe them in detail. What are the main takeaways when it comes to financing of local government units? The first one is the facilitation of the empowerment of local government for granting them general competences in deciding on income sources and expenditure directions. This is very important in the context of subsidies. When the central government kind of tells the local government units how to spend the money they receive, and there's no great space for maneuver for local government units, whilst in some cases they should be granted more power over deciding on what to finance or not and how to do it. The second one is to ensure adequate financial resources for the implementation of specific tasks imposed on local government units. And of course, I was mentioning this, the more you expect from the local government units, the more resources, financial, but also human resources, they should be granted. The third kind of recommendation is again related with the subsidy system. When the local government is told on how to use the money, they tend to concentrate more on administering the subsidy than on deciding on the directions of the development of a given local government unit. And this is also a kind of trap. The fourth one is to ensure the proper financial autonomy of the local government units, including the influence on the income. It means giving the local government units the authority to decide on the sources of income. I think that this is a very graphic example when it comes to the dog fee. As I said, it's not established in every municipality. And again, they have like free choice on whether to use this instrument and to ask their citizens to ask for the dog or not. This is, of course, a very simple example. Okay, the last one is about the limits of indebtedness, as those can also limit the financial independence of the local government units. And now going further to the public services, of course, local governments should be the best place to provide and manage key public services because it is very close to its citizens. Again, the chain of accountability and responsibility for shortcomings is shortened in case of local government units. I mean, it's easier to to say who is responsible for what and how the procedures should look like. And sometimes it's also easier to deal with concrete challenges related to providing public services. What the Constitution says about it. First, it says that the public tasks serving to satisfy the needs of the local government community should be performed by the local government unit as its own tasks. And now coming smoothly to the division, here we can see on the graph the division of tasks of municipalities. I think that in a way it's also kind of similar to the Georgian example. We have the own tasks, such as providing heat, electricity, gas, basic services for the citizens. But on the other hand, we have also commission tasks. These are those who are provided globally in the country, but the central government's kind of commission doing this to local government units. And for example, we can say in case of municipalities about providing social benefits and running various registry offices. These own tasks can be further divided into compulsory tasks and optional tasks, of course, depending on the free resources, financial resources that municipalities have. They can decide on doing something extra, and in this case, they can take up some optional tasks. Generally, when it comes to the scope of tasks imposed on the local government units, not only on municipalities, but also on counties and regions, is quite extensive. It's kind of obvious that providing such services as roads might exceed the area of one local government unit. This is why they very often cooperate, and we can witness a couple of forms of cooperation between the local government units in Poland. It also happens that it's more reasonable to provide such services as part of a public-private partnership, and it's also very popular at the moment, including what is also very important, the cooperation with NGOs. There are some like ad hoc monitoring and evaluation tools to evaluate the quality of providing public services, but there is no like one generally adopted throughout Poland tool that would be used for this purpose. There is also very useful, especially now when we have the pandemic and we cannot freely go to the municipal office and talk to the staff. We have the online platform for citizens. It's called ePUAP, and through this platform you can actually deal with a lot of things. You can ask your municipality to provide you with the documents. You can commission a birth certificate for you, or your spouse, and so forth and so on. So nowadays it is really very, very useful. And now just summarizing with three main takeaways. The first one concerns the institutional setup for division of tasks between the central government and the local government units. It's from the Polish experience, it's visible that it should be quite precise. It works when it's precise, and it doesn't when it's vague. I'm talking here about such areas as healthcare and education, where we still struggle to find the proper balance when it comes to the involvement of the central government and local government units. The second one is about the promotion of cooperation between self-government units. This has proved to be very efficient in Poland. And the last one is, of course, about the development of a tool that would facilitate the evaluation and monitoring of providing public services by local government units. Okay, I think that this is it, and I will pass the floor to Stanislav.
Thank you very much, Agnieszka, for presenting such interesting insights and findings. I just remind you that you can ask questions here in question and answers, and also I think you can ask questions at Facebook while we're presenting our findings. And of course, in the second part of this conference, we will have time to discuss this every question. Well, I think I need to share my screen. Well, I tried to be concise in presenting three topics. First of all, it's empowerment of local communities. Second, it's absorption of external funds. And third is crisis response. In Poland, empowerment of the local community is carried out through a participatory process, which means engaging local people to participate in different activities, such as elections, referendums, decision-making, and control activities at different levels, of course. The efficient functioning of local governments units depends on, to a large extent, on dialogue and level of cooperation between local people and local authorities. Well, generally speaking, there are three main factors that indicate and shows the level of cooperation between these actors. First of all, it's functions of the local authorities and capacity to deal with some issues and problems at the local level. Second, it's potential of local people and their desire to change and engage in the process of managing at the local level some issues and dealing with some challenges. And third is general conditions, such as level of understanding and social communication, awareness about the problems, and maybe mutual trust and some other issues. Well, the participatory process can take three forms, as you see on my slide. Very basic is informing. On this slide, you see some tools we have in Poland to deliver information to local people and spread information, inform people on some projects, on some issues and problems. In Poland, local self-government units are equipped with a wide range of tools. Besides traditional communication channels like newspapers, radio, TV, or leaflets, there are some tools available for online communication. And you see on this list some online tools. And among others, these are web pages, public information bulletin, electronic newspapers, social networks. And I would like to just briefly present some ICT system that help local governments to spread information. It's called CSMS. And this is an information and communication technology system that's used by local governments, organizations, and sometimes even private and commercial organizations to inform local people on some events, some initiatives, and on some even extreme weather events and threats by spreading SMS messages at specific area. Due to cooperation with the cell phone providers, the system allows local governments to inform residents on specific matters. At this stage, I should mention that local people do not have opportunity to give a feedback. They just informed on some issues and some problems. Well, there are some potential obstacles, of course, in informing people on some matters. First of all, it's difficult access to online platforms and online informations. Well, as we discussed yesterday, there are some obstacles in reaching web pages for adult people, can be. Also, there is a lack of platform that allow, for example, dialogue and feedback from local people to local governments on some initiatives or some information. Well, the second layer is consultations. And consultations is also quite important form of cooperation and empowerment of local people. These activities led to efficient and long-term maintenance of the balance between the municipal authorities and local community. Also, we see some obstacles here. Just I came back. There are some obstacles in consultations between local people and local authorities. We should emphasize that consultations should be organized at the very earliest possible stage in order to deliver proper information to local people and to inform local people on initiatives at every stage of consultations. Well, I jump to the third and I think the highest level of civic participation and the cooperation between authorities and local people. It's co-decision. Co-decision is the highest level, and this is a form of partnership between authorities and residents that consists of some form of cooperation and transferring responsibility from authorities to local people to implement some initiatives and implement some projects. A good example of co-decision is a participatory budget. Well, we will have some case studies and infographics in our guidebook, but participatory budget, I would mention here that enables local communities to directly influence decisions on allocating a portion of the public budget to projects submitted by residents. And I would say this very effective way of involving residents in the planning of spending public funds and put some priorities at the local level. Well, it is interesting that the first city that introduced a participatory budget was Sopot, is a city located in the north of Poland. And Sopot was introduced this initiative in 2011. And right after, next year, some big cities like Warsaw, Krakow, Wrocław also introduced this initiative. And well, till the current time, every big city and small cities have participatory budget and allow local people, local residents to decide on some initiatives. Well, we prepared some table that sum up the level of engagement and empowerment of local peoples. And as you see, we specify these 3 layers of interaction and provide some conclusions on communication mode and characteristic. Well, it should be remembered that first, informing, it's very basic and easy way to interact. It's just spreading and sharing information among residents. Second layer, consultation. It's a kind of joint actions and joint discussion of a long list of ideas and specifying some short list at this stage. Co-decision is the highest level, and it's from this level of cooperation benefited both local governments and residents. Empowerment of local people and some findings and insights. Of course, you see a list of some aspects that promotes empowerment of local people, but let's remember that in current times, the development of local democracy and modern technologies open up new opportunities for residents to participate in the work of local governments. And in Poland, Polish citizens and residents have access to online documents, have access to some online meetings of local governments. I have just to mention that empowerment of local communities promote economic efficiency for all participants and for all parties. Independence of local community, just every community and every local government is unique because every local government has its origin issues, challenges, and also people have different priorities. I mean, in specific priorities, generally people would like to have a well-worked system, and that's it. And empowerment promotes participation of residents in managing local affairs. Well, regarding absorption of external funds, I think it's one of the key elements of development of local governments, because in case of Poland, after accession to the European Union in 2004, this brought in new investment opportunities and for the public sector. I would mention just 2 very, very important principles of co-financing and absorption of external funds. It applies to the European Union and also for other international funds. First of all, the principle of co-financing. That means that funds from the EU budget cannot replace national funds, but it only support and supplement the local budgets and local funds. Another very important principle is verification. In case of the European Commission, there are 3 stages of verification. First stage is ex ante, is before implementation. During implementation and ex post after implementation, it's very essential to estimate and evaluate the progress in every specific project at the different stages. I also provided some statistics. It's very interesting that within 10 years from 2006 and 2016, municipalities received a total of more than 70 billion of zlotys from the European subsidies. And it's almost 3/4 of aid funds derived from the European Union. And it means that municipalities in Poland is quite actively participate in such projects and develop to some extent infrastructure, initiate some projects and intensively cooperate with local people. Well, very frequently, also in other countries, some local governments alarmed that there are barriers in process of applying for the EU funds. And to some extent, it's true, because one of the main barrier is financial conditions. Well, in case of Poland, it depends on projects and funds, and the average and the share of contribution from the European Union range from 10% to 70%. And there are some solutions for this, of course. In our guidebook, we studied, for example, Lodz voivodeship, and just based on this case, figure out how local governments in Poland deal with these obstacles. And here you see some main sources that can help to avoid these obstacles. Of course, it's own contribution. I mean, profits of municipal enterprises, pre-financing in the form of loans granted by banks, leasings, loans from National Fund for Environmental Protection and Water Management, and also external funds like EBRD and European Investment Bank. The possibility of receiving advance payment in case of European funds provided some financial assistance for each local government, because its sources can be invested in the project in advance. And even poor municipalities can deal with quite big projects. I will talk shortly about very big project in small town. Also personal qualifications and self-government capacity. Well, at the very beginning, indeed, Polish local governments face some problems with dealing with project management, with application procedures, but as every local government implement more and more projects, they gain some very essential knowledges. At this moment, we also find out that some local governments cooperate with external companies that also assisting them in dealing with some project managements, in some application procedures, and also with receiving some external financing. And it's normal for Poland. Self-governed capacity, it's interdependent with personal qualifications, and self-governed capacity developed as much as local government participate in such projects. Well, here I provided some statistics from 2018, and as you see, well, the first place occupied by Warsaw, and Warsaw implemented projects on 70 billion zlotys. But I would like to stress and emphasize 14th place, that place by Racibórz. It's a small city. It's a very small city in Poland, and with 55,000 inhabitants. And this city was ranked on the 14th place due to construction of the Racibórz-Dolny Flood Protection Reserve on the Odra River. And this reserve started to operate in June 2020. And the investment was carried out with funds provided by the World Bank, the European Union, the Council of Europe Development Bank, the National Fund for Environment Protection and Water Management, and some external funds. And this case study we will investigate in more details in our guidebook. So all participants of this conference will receive this guidebook in December. And this example proved that even small town can implement very big projects. Well, I would say that EU funds are not a ready-made solution to stimulate the economic development of municipalities, but the well-being of local governments is shaped primarily by efficient development policy, and of course, EU funds positively contribute to this process. The appropriate use of external funds, taking into account local governments' needs, financial conditions, as well as long-term development plans, may directly contribute to the operational capacity of local governments and promote more deep cooperation between residents. On this slide, we just presented a Polish crisis management system. And as you see, there are some levels of crisis management. And crisis management perceived by Polish legislation as an element of national security management and defined as an activity of public administration bodies. Well, also you will find more profound analysis of crisis management system in our guidebook, but it's like a picture and scheme of division of power in terms of management system. Local governments, as you already know, function within the public administration bodies, and Polish legislation imposed on local governments some duties and obligations to ensure national security. And I think that the principle of decentralization of public administration requires the local governments to be an active participant in public life. And security in Poland is ensured at every level of management on the territory, at the local government, regional government, and central levels. Well, local governments usually received a first information on some crisis, and then they should deal with this, or they should raise the information and send information to the next layer, to the next level of territorial division, if it's not possible to deal with this situation at this level. And here I would like to briefly present some, I would say this is this Polish approach to deal with every crisis. And there are four phases in crisis management. First is prevention, second preparation, third response, and fourth recovery. Well, the prevention phase concerns actions that eliminate or reduce the probability of a crisis situation and limits its effects. The essence of preparation is planning appropriate activities and carrying out continuous monitoring of threats, potential threats. The third phase, response, is a direct response to the occurrence of a threat. When pre-planned and prepared activities of appropriate services are carried out in order to help and restore some buildings or some territory, or to deal with with the crisis. And the last is post-crisis recovery stage. Its essence to remove the effects of and restore infrastructure and resources after the crisis. Well, I think due to decentralization and the delegation of responsibilities from one level, central level, to regional and local levels, Poland reached some success in dealing with crisis management and dealing with crisis situations. And this allows adequately to react on these situations. And also the flexibility of a crisis management was increased due to decentralization. And this had direct impact on economics of crisis management, primarily by generating some savings and shorten the decision-making procedure and time for reacting on every crisis. Well, this is very short and brief presentation of these three quite important topics in terms of policy decentralization. And I hope we will have time to discuss some of these topics, and for sure we will share with you our findings and our research in December. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm done with my presentation. And well, I would like to ask our colleagues and partners from Georgia to share their presentation. And Salome and Kwanza, you have 30 minutes to present your part of our guidebook. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope you hear me well. Yeah, great. So good afternoon, everyone, once again. First of all, let me express my gratitude for your interest in today's event, and especially in Georgia's case, and discuss this local self-governance in Georgia. The report that we will present today is a general overview of my country's situation regarding decentralization. It's not a comprehensive study because we had very limited time for preparing it, but however, we think that it's a good starting point or basis for further discussions and maybe for more detailed study in future in this field. It was really interesting for us to work on this topic, even though Salome and I have public administration and political science background. It was first time for us to focus on so many aspects of decentralization. And putting all this together was not an easy task, and it all became possible with great support from our experts. Some of them are present at this conference today, and I would like to thank them again for their support. In total, we conducted 5 interviews and 3 expert consultations. And with this legal framework, all this information are put together in this report. This is the topics we will cover today, and this is the topic of the report as well. During today's presentation, I would rather not focus more on the descriptive or explanatory aspects, but rather on the findings and important aspects that we think needs to be taken into the consideration if we want to have stronger self-governance in our country. Okay. So before going to the first topic, which is empowerment of local communities, I would like to give you a brief overview of Georgia's administrative divisions. So Georgia has 2 autonomous republics of Agara and Abkhazia and 9 regions. We call them Khare. You can see the list here. I will not bore you with the names. And in addition, we have 69 municipalities, which includes 5 self-governing cities: Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, Batumi, Kutaisi, Rustavi, and Poti. And these 69 municipalities also include 5 municipalities that are occupied by Russia after August war in 2008. And they are Akhalgori, Eredvi, Kurta, Tigri, and Ajara. In Georgia, we have the self-government is exercised on municipal level. And along with other many laws and government decrees, it is primarily regulated by the Organic Law of Georgia, Local Self-Government Code, which was introduced in 2014. It's also important to mention that Georgia has new decentralization strategy for 2020-2025, along with this action plan, which significantly increases the rights and powers of local self-government and supports its financial empowerment. The strategy also focuses on the importance of transparent governance and promotes citizens' participation on local level. It will be extremely interesting to observe what kind of effect and effect this strategy will have in the nearest future. However, today we will focus on current existing challenges and gaps that we're facing, and hope that the implementation of the strategy will address many of them in the nearest future. Let me start with this empowerment of local communities. And by this topic, we mainly mean the local citizens' participation and the forms of participation in exercise local governance. But before moving to that, let me mention two very important bodies at the municipal level. It's the Municipality Sacrabula, which is representative body of municipality, and the mayor, which is executive body and the highest official of the municipality. And City Hall is an institution subordinated by this executive body of the municipality and ensures the exercise of the power of the mayor. As for the forms of the citizens' participation in the exercise of local self-government, the law gives 5 main forms. Local municipalities have right to add their own ones, but these are the forms that are defined by the law. So it's General Assembly of a Settlement, Petition, Council of City Advisors, participation in the sessions of the Municipality Sacrabula, and hearing reports. It's really interesting to compare these forms and see which one is more used, which one is least used, and the reasons behind this. So today I'll focus on 3 of them mainly. The first is General Assembly of a Settlement. It is a self-organization tool for the population of a village, small town, or city, which aims to discuss locally important socio-economic issues and ongoing or upcoming projects before they are incorporated in the municipal budget. This tool also lets local community draft proposals or raise relevant remarks. So it's a really important tool. However, it was expected to be used more while introducing to the law, but reality shows that it's not the case, because due to complicated legal procedures and the need of self-organizing, turned out that this tool is rather impractical than expected. So almost all these general assemblies of a settlement that were organized during these years were supported by the international or the non-governmental organization. So local communities do not really have their own, they lack these own capabilities to organize this. Even though the petitions might seem easier to use and organize, they are still not so frequently used. And the reason behind this phenomenon can be that people either are not aware or they do not fully realize the scope of influence and impact these petitions can have on the decision-making process. So they don't really use it. However, the more frequent tool which is used by the local population in practice of local self-government is attending the hearing reports. So at least once a year, the mayor and the member of the municipality Sacrabula hold public hearings and they report on the work they perform. And the public can attend these meetings and have this, interaction there. People usually do attend these meetings, but there is an issue of the affiliation of the peoples who really attend these hearings. And there is a concern that the public sector representatives of people affiliated with them usually attend these hearings and not the general public, because maybe they do not have this feeling that their opinion matter or their opinion are welcome. Okay. In conclusion, due to this, in regards with this empowerment of local communities, can be said that Georgia, on the one hand, has quite advanced legislative framework regarding this local self-government, but on the other hand, if we look into the practice and actual implementation of what's written in the law, we have some issues and problems there. The limited financial resources, nihilism within the local population, and lack of information among the citizens lead to the municipalities become rather kind of administrative tools rather than functional bodies with ability to meet the needs of the local communities. And this problem concerns other topics of today's report, not only this one, but we will discuss it later on. Now let me briefly talk about the financing of local government activities in Georgia. First of all, I would like to tell you that municipalities in Georgia have their own budgets for purpose of performing the functions and obligations of the municipality. But of course, the problem is that this budget is never enough for meeting the needs of the local communities. Mainly, the municipal budget consists of two types of receivables: its own receipts, such as local taxes, property tax, fees, and VAT. Here, I would like to mention that since 2019, 19% of VAT is distributed among the municipalities according to the rules for distribution. This rules for distribution takes into the consideration number of population, number of children on this territory, and some other criteria, which gives Tbilisi about 46% of this 19% of VAT. So very low amount of financial resources go to the other municipalities, which is of course not enough for them. It also, the budget of local municipal budget also includes, as I mentioned, local taxes and fees, which unfortunately also do not play important part in this budget. Whatever plays important and significant part in the municipal budget is transferred funds. We have different kind of transferred funds in Georgia. It's capital transfers, special transfers, and targeted transfers. Capital transfers are the ones which aim to cover the big infrastructural projects, for example, or some investment projects in the municipalities. Special transfers are given to the municipality from the central budget to mitigate damages caused by, for example, catastrophes like ecological catastrophes or natural disasters or these kind of events. And the target transfers are the ones which are given to the municipalities in order to support delegated powers from the central government to the local governments. And it's important to mention that the transfers can be made from central or autonomous republics' budgets to the municipal budgets. Municipal budgets cannot have these transfers among themselves, and it's also an issue of discussion whether it is right to be so or it needs to be allowed. Here, there is also, in addition, all the municipalities in Georgia have reserve funds which shall not exceed 2% of the total budget. And even though the mayor have a freedom to spend this reserve fund with special purposes, of course, this amount of money which is this reserve fund is mostly not enough for meeting the needs of the local population. So as a conclusion, I can say that on the one hand, because of the fact that municipalities have their own budget, should give them more freedom, but this budget is so low that they cannot satisfy the needs, so they need additional support from the central government, and they thus depend on the central the budget and central government. Really, there is a high dependence, so they cannot address local needs adequately. And it leads to this dependence, which is a problem, unfortunately, in Georgia. About the loans and the grants, Salome will talk about it more details after this slide, and I would like to thank you and give floor to Salome now.
Thank you, Gonza. I will ask you to move to the next slides afterwards. So before starting my part about providing public services, and then I will move to this grants and loans as Gonza mentioned, because it's follows. I would like to mention that probably everybody knows that our director is under the intensive care because of the COVID-19, and I would like to wish him a quick recovery. Yeah. So to start with public services, I would like to mention, first of all, that one of the targets of the target effects of the decentralization process is to enable local municipalities to independently provide public services at the municipal level. So there are, like in practice, so we need to mention that there are two types of competencies that the local self-governments are meant to fulfill in terms of providing public services. First one is exclusive, second is delegated, and third one is voluntary based. But according to the legislation, you will see only two powers, like exclusive and the own power is the same. Legal-wise, and the second one is delegated power. And this exclusive and all power is gives the local municipalities ability to act independently with their own budget. But in terms of delegated powers, the central authorities and the autonomous republics gives them the delegated functions and gives the materials and financial resources to act and provide services and programs nationwide. Can you move to this next slide, Gonza? Yeah, thanks a lot. So according to the law on self-government, which Gonza mentioned and described in detail, you will see the Article 16, where is the big list of the responsibilities and own powers of the local municipalities, which I'm not going through because it is searchable, but I would like to highlight some of them because, for example, the Code on the Rights of Child was adjusted and a newly adopted law, and there are parts about child's education, protection, healthcare, social cares, and it's kind of moving to the municipality's own power. And it is really important to mention that it was developed in 2019 with the effort of government, parliament, and experts, and was adopted in 2020 August. So it's a very new one, and let's see. The next own power is managing the waste supply, public transportation, issuing permissions on construction works. So this is a major powers that the local municipalities have. So the next is delegated power. I wanted to list some of them, but so in the legislation, in the Article 17, paragraph 4, you don't see any list of competences that the local municipalities have as delegated power. So sometimes they have this delegated power, sometimes not. So it depends on situation, and if the central government decide to give this delegated power to the local governments, then it is adjusted to the local conditions. And one of the example could be the military conscription service. And the third, the voluntary-based power that I wanted to mention, and that's not mentioned in the law, but it's in reality, it really exists. It's kind of one-time financial support to health treatment, operation, or giving money for purchasing this medication. So that's also quite important one, but it's up to them to decide, and they are allowed to set their priorities. So we can move to the next slide, Kwanza. Yeah, there are several challenges in terms of providing public services. First of all, I would like to mention that the small villages are not entitled to provide the services defined in the Article 16. So only municipalities with self-governance status have the right to provide such kind of like exclusive services. So part of the experts argue that the decision made in 2017 of abolishing, merging the status of self-government cities, 7 self-government cities, was a wrong decision, which having more number of cities at first was decided in 2014, and the rationale behind it was to have more self-governed cities with some more independent decisions. But then, as the government of Georgia and the ruling party said, it did not live up to their expectations, and that's why they decided to change this decision. But part of the experts see this decision as a political decision exclusively. So one more issue that Kwanza also mentioned is that local governments do not have their own enough budget and enough budget for adding some sort of services or improving the services. One more thing is that I think Kwanza also partly mentioned that whenever the local community members have an opportunity to take part in decision making, sometimes they abstain because they do not see the point of being involved, because they do not believe that they will have any kind of impact on the decision. Then there was Tbilisi City Hall once decided to have the survey, online survey, in order to involve local citizens in budget formation, and unfortunately very few of them participated because they failed to run the information campaign. But another tool that is created by the Municipal Service Development Agency, which link you see on the slide here, you can go there and see the online services, which is exclusively for providing online services only, and not other types of services. It's about public services, of course. So according to the decentralization strategies that Kwanza described previously, the aim of there is described that 21 municipalities will adopt this online application in the future. But now it works for Tbilisi, and they started running this in different municipalities. There is also one platform, but it's kind of an ongoing process now. We can move to the next slide, Kwanza. As for the standards and criteria for providing services, there is no such standard, but it is important to mention that there is a big difference between big cities, small cities, with the cities populated by the ethnic minorities, for example. So there should be created some there should be some classifications to provide services, and have different standards in terms of like providing services to different locations and to different types of people, I mean like groups. As for the monitoring and evaluation for the road and infrastructural projects, there are hired specialists who can assess different projects, programs. For the cleaning service and landscaping, provision of external lighting, there is an effectiveness audit. But for the rest, as for example, for assessing the satisfaction of services by the local citizens and in general how it goes in different municipalities, there is no such assessment tool, but there exists informally the state audit, independent audit, and internal audit, but the internal audit in the local municipalities does not work well. I mean, like in most cases, they fail to assess the quality of services. And in terms of budget evaluation, as Kwanza described, there are certain indicators, but in terms of service assessments, there are no such kind of indicators developed. So we can move to the next slide. The next topic is the absorption of external funds and loans. So Kwanza mentioned some parts of it, and I will be very concrete with loans and grants only. Local municipalities are allowed to receive funds or loans from external donor organizations or like World Bank or Bank of Asia or EBRD, for example, but only based on the decision and permission of the government of Georgia. And there is no legal defined criteria for which the municipalities can absorb grants and loans. So that's why the decision of the government is discretionary. So who are the major players here who make decisions? Like major bodies are the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Regional Development and Infrastructure of Georgia. So they are playing a major role in terms of giving permission or not giving permission to get loans or funds. But when it comes to receiving loans or submitting application to get loan, the major player here and so-called mediator is the Municipal Development Fund of Georgia. Who has a good cooperation with the Bank of Asia, World Bank, and others. And this is a trusted institution and this kind of control body who can avoid money laundering and bankruptcy, for example, as the supporters of the control explain. So we can move to the next slide. Yeah, there are certain barriers in terms of getting the grants or loans, but when we talk about loans, we need to mention that the municipalities shall not exceed 10% of the average annual own revenues of the municipality for the previous 3 budget years, but different rules are applied for the municipalities. It is the same in some cases, it's not in others. Another challenge that we can name is the delayed permission from the central government. The thing is that, as you know, all the international donors are not announcing and just notifying municipalities or beneficiaries about the calls. So always, unless they do not have these annual calls. That's why they have their own timelines, and it is obligation to follow this timeline. And that's why, in local level, at first, it is problematic to get the information about the calls. Then it's quite problematic to get permission. Then another problem is the human resources, skilled staff who can write and run projects. And then there is no practice of outsourcing for project writing here, as it is well integrated in different developed states. So for the next slide. Yeah, because of this like problem, and I would like to mention one example also. Like there was a European project program call under EU framework, and one of the obligation of this call was to build consortium between local NGOs and local municipalities, and only 4 municipalities managed to apply. So they're due to different reasons. That's why in 2019, government of Georgia, the prime minister, issued a decree according to which the municipalities are permitted to apply to external funds directly. But these fund donors are also like kind of this is also selective. Like they can apply to UN, to EU, USAID, and GIZ funds. And this is in force until January 1st, 2021. And I think that it will be continued in the future. And we digged into different examples of how municipalities absorb different funds. And one of the good examples is the Mayors for Economic Growth. So this is not exclusively for Georgia, but this is for all EAP states, and one part is Georgia, of course. And out of 64 municipalities in Georgia, 48 are involved in this process. And the main goal is to help the economic development on local level. And 47 municipalities out of 48 already developed their own strategy, which will be presented soon. So this is very interesting case, I think, and it will be prolonged, as I know, this project, because it was successful in all countries. So we can move to the next slide. The next topic is the crisis response, crisis management. So first of all, like to start with, we need to mention that there is no one common crisis strategy to respond different types of crisis cases on local level, and neither on national level. So all cases are individual and they need to act accordingly. As for the legal framework, this is the same. Like we don't have like one legal document that describes everything, but you can find some parts about crisis management and crisis response in Constitution of Georgia, international agreements, and the most important one that we found with Kwanzaa is the law for Georgia on public safety, which has like locally important cases and nationally important. So locally important means that the emergency situation could be announced on local level, and the local municipality or the neighboring municipalities are allowed to interfere. But in case of nationally important case, the emergency situation is announced throughout the state, and they can't, like local municipality can't act independently. And the next law was on like public health. It like manages the healthy lifestyle of people and different regulations, which I'm not going into depth because like you will see the report in few days, which will be published online, and you will see all details. So we can move to the next slide. I'll be very brief in describing two cases which are very important and very interesting to illustrate like what happens when we have different types of crisis. So first was the COVID case, first wave. I want to be very specific about this because like first case was different from wave was different from the second wave, which we are going through, and it is disastrous now. But during the first wave, we tried to choose a kind of best success case, which was in Kakheti, which is the biggest region in Georgia, and very important because it's named as a wine region. Here, since there is no common strategy and document developed by the government of Georgia for the crisis management, the National Intersectional Coordination Council was established. And they decided how to act after that. But before developing concrete recommendations, all municipalities had to act independently. So what does it mean? So I'm not going to describe what the COVID crisis caused, because you all know, but what was the measure taken, that might be interesting for you. First of all, they moved to online work, most of them. They started awareness raising campaigns, the local municipalities, I mean. Then they created the regional hotline by the governor's office, but then the local municipalities also created the local municipal hotlines, because they managed to be in close contact with their own community members. And then because of the importance of the agricultural work, the local municipalities governor's office, along with the police, developed a list of farmers and timetable for traveling for agricultural purposes only. So that was the response from the local side. So the next case is different. It's about flooding in Rajalesh-Kumiko region in 2020 summer. That was also interesting because so this is connected to the natural disaster. So it's different type of case, but the damage of this crisis was tremendous, because lots of villages were cut from the rest of the world, lots of bridges and roads were damaged, and part of the villages stayed without electricity. So municipalities had to act somehow independently to have a rapid response. So we can move to the next slide. So the actions that were taken by the local municipalities together with the governor's office, which was headed by the deputy governor, were the following. As I mentioned during our interview with mayor and governor's office, they follow the rules defined by the Red Cross. So that was purely their decision to do so, because the only document that they found was the Red Cross guidelines. Then the local municipality, with the permission of the central government, use their own budget before interference of the central government. Then the local employees moved to the emergency mode, and everybody worked there. And they managed to mobilize the local volunteers and sportsmen to help to provide food and medicine to the people by helicopter who were stuck in the villages. And the important thing, in continuation with the one slides, is that the finance for the food and medical treatment were allocated from the local budget, and the roads and bridges were dealt with, rehabilitated by the central government budget. So that was kind of split it in two parts, and so that was also central decision, but they gave permission to the local municipalities to use their own budget for that, which was not allocated for this purpose. That's more important to mention. So the next slide. So here I would like to make conclusions, mainly the challenges that were findings, challenges that we saw from our findings. First of all, I need to mention that all the changes related to the decentralization, like most of the changes, are connected to the political change, for example, elections or the government change. That's why it's kind of this decentralization related legislation initiatives are like long-term vision. This is also quite problematic. The local municipalities are not independent because they mostly depend on the central government permission and budget. Like local communities do not have information about their rights, opportunities, and forms of participation, and on the other hand, they do not believe that their word matters. And at the same time, like local governors, local self-government representatives sometimes obtain to hold consultations with the local communities because they know that even if they give them opportunity to be part of the discussion and set the priorities, they need to go to the central government, and the final decision is up to the central government anyway. And then they might not meet the locals' expectations, and that will upset locals basically, and that's why they prefer to act independently since they're elected. And the two more things that I would like to mention, and I will finish with this. Dealing with the crisis situation largely depends on the abilities of the representatives of the local self-governments, and if the administration is weak, then the problem arises. And in most cases, the local authorities do not perceive dependence on the central government as a problem. And the last words with which we begin the presentation, just to move to the next slide, we need to mention that the decentralization could not be achieved without giving the local municipalities to act independently in terms of providing services, absorbing external funds, and managing budgets. So thanks for everything. Thanks for attention, and we are happy to receive questions.
Thank you very much, Salome and Gvansa, for your speeches. Very informative and very comprehensive information on Georgia experience. Well, we are far behind of schedule, and I think it's a very good moment to give some rest to our interpreters after such massive information. And I would like to stick to the schedule and give 10 minutes break. And after the break, we will have a pleasure to hear some comments and feedbacks from our stakeholders. And then we will have a question and answer section. So thank you very much for your speeches, presentations. It was very informative and comprehensive. Thank you very much. And in 10 minutes, we will meet here in Zoom. Meanwhile, you can send us questions at Facebook and in Zoom, and we will reply and answer your questions after the break. And thank you very much. Do not leave this chat, just turn off your camera and microphone. Thank you. Okay, short break. Do we have interpreter?
Salome Akart.
Do we have an interpreter online?
She is online, but I'm trying to.
I am texting them now.
Okay.
To find her.
Yeah, it was intensive 2 sessions.
Yeah.
Salome needs to have some rest.
Yeah. Just a minute.
Mm-hmm. Agnieszka, during the break, we received one question, and question is following. Question to all the speakers wishing to answer. In which aspect from the presented ones can Georgia apply the Polish experience efficiently? Where would you see an improvement to be necessary according to the Polish practice? And I replied that I will answer this question in Q&A session. I see Salome, interpreter, online, yeah? And
She's back.
Yeah, she is back.
okay, great. Okay, we can start and we can open stakeholder and stakeholder session. And I would like to hear, first of all, their feedbacks and comments on decentralization in general, and specifically on decentralization in Poland and Georgia. Just raise a hand or just turn on your microphone and start to talk.
Professor Gia, Professor Koka. Miss Nino, whoever wants to start can start. Yeah, I think that Professor Gia Hublo will start.
Gladly. First of all, I would like to thank our colleagues, Salome and Guanta, so our Polish colleagues and our Georgian colleagues, Salome and Guanta, for this tremendous work. It is really important what you're doing. It is very hard to evaluate what you're doing because until today, decentralization processes are only political decisions, unfortunately, and it is not well prepared for, first of all, intellectually. There's less activity in these areas, unfortunately, and the social awareness and involvement is also not very high. But I'm convinced that as a result of this additional non-political platform will strengthen the capacities of the decentralization. And I would like to mention a few things, and also in case of Q&A session, probably people will say this. I would like to, first of all, greet this special accent on the financial aspect of the self-government bodies and the fiscal decentralization issue, because it has been said that I will tell me what kind of financial system you have, and I will tell you what kind of state you have. So this expression shows and underlines the fact that we can see our fiscal decentralization, and then, of course, make some conclusions to what extent our self-government bodies are actually independent, and the power that they have is based and directly related to their financial independence, and I hope that it will be strengthened in the future and the capacities will be improved. In Georgia, it is very relevant, the interest, but also there are fears regarding decentralization, and that is why for us it is very important for us to know the experience from Poland. Unfortunately, in Georgia, people still believe that decentralized country is kind of a synonym of a weak state somehow, and there's this fear that decentralization and so to say encouraging decentralization already has the risks of the weakening of the state. Of course, this is bad that people have this fear, but of course, we should not ignore the fact that it has also its limits, the decentralization process. But decentralization also doesn't necessarily mean anti-centralization. I believe that the society should be informed about this accordingly, and this message or this approach should be communicated in the correct way. And I believe this is very important because for the people not to block basically this direction and the measures that are being taken in this direction. The more the It is also very important for the political stability of the country. The more additional elements are, of course, involved in the political decision making, we have more stability. It should be obvious, but the realization is quite complicated of this approach because it comes from the fear that decentralization means weakness, and I believe that this project will be very interesting for me personally in terms of sharing Polish experience, how it was possible that the tendencies of decentralization were not identified with a weak state. In Georgia, I also believe in Georgian reality, one of the important issues in the decentralization process will be local personnel, local staff to ensure that local staff is employed on the local level, and to find the corresponding expertise, because unfortunately there are not enough competencies at this point to have territorial units that function as well as we would like them to function. And we believe that in this direction we have to do a lot of things, and how much we will achieve this normative level and how much it will be possible to delegate. This is one issue, and how much the local staff, local personnel will be ready is also another issue to fulfill these competencies and functions that they are supposed to. To say better, maybe this is quite completely new for some, because one is what we have in normative acts and legal framework, and there's another issue what we do in practice, of course, because personnel and staff to ensure staff and the corresponding competencies is another issue. I know that our time is quite limited, so I just wanted to say shortly about to focus on a few issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your comments. Saloma, I think you mentioned another person, yeah?
Mr. Kokakyaburadze might have some comment.
Yes, gladly. Hello, everyone. Once again, I would like to greet everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. As for the decentralization in our country,
2006 წლიდან მოყოლებული ვარ ამ თემაში და მთელი ეს პერიოდი რა 2020 წლამდე დღემდე რაც ასე ვთქვათ განხორციელდებოდა ქვეყანაში და მათ შორის დეცენტრალიზაციის მიმართულებით თითქმის ყველა იმ პროცესის მონაწილე ყოფილ ვარ და რამოდენიმე რაღაცა ჩვენს შემთხვევაში ჩვენი დეცენტრალიზაციის სისტემასთან დაკავშირებით შემიძლია გითხრათ რაღაცა ჩემი შეფასებები. პირველ რიგში ის რომ ვეთანხმებით ბატონ გიას, რაზეც საუბრობდა, რომ საქართველოში დეცენტრალიზაცია ყოველთვის რაღაცა უსაფრთხოების კონტექსტში გამოიყენება, რომ ჩვენ მაგალითად ჩრდილოეთით ახლა რუსეთი გვყავს, აქეთ სომხეთი, აზერბაიჯანი, რომელიც ჩვენ ტერიტორიული რაღაცა პრეტენზიები ქონდა წარსულში ერთმანეთთან, ამიტომ მუდმივად საფრთხე, რომ თუ ჩვენ რომელიმე ჩვენს რეგიონს ან მუნიციპალიტეტს რაღაცა უფრო მეტი თავისუფლება გამოუჩნდება და შეძლებენ ისინი ადგილობრივი მნიშვნელობის საკითხების და საკუთარი პასუხისმგებლობით გადაჭრას, ვთქვათ, რაღაცა ჩვენს ტერიტორიულ ერთეულებში, ეს გამოიწვევს ქვეყნის დაშლას და დაქუცმაცებას. მათ შორის ამ მიზნით ჩვენთან ხშირად არის გამოყენებული მაგალითად ქართული ეკლესია, მე მოვიყვანდი თქვათ 2000 ამ ასე ვთქვათ დასადასტურებლად ამ ფაქტის დასადასტურებლად 2013 წელს იყო ასეთი განცხადება საქართველოს კათოლიკოს პატრიარქის მხრიდან, რომ თუ ქვეყანაში დეცენტრალიზაციის რეფორმა, ზოგადად თვითმმართველობის რეფორმა განხორციელდება, ეს ქვეყნის დაშლის და დაქუცმაცების წინაპირობა იქნება. ამიტომ ეს რელიგიური კონტექსტი ხშირად აძლიერებს აი ამ გააზრებას დეცენტრალიზაციის როგორც ქვეყნის რაღაცა დაშლის და დაქუცმაცების მიმართულებას და უნდა გავითვალისწინოთ, რომ დაახლოებით ამ ინსტიტუტს, ანუ პატრიარქის ინსტიტუტს საქართველოში თითქმის 90%-იანი ნდობა აქვს. ეს ერთი ნაწილი ამ ყველაფრის და გარდა ამისა, ჩვენს შემთხვევაში ძალიან დიდ გავლენას ახდენს თვითონ საქართველოში მუნიციპალიტეტების ზომა, რაც ხელს უშლის რეალურად დეცენტრალიზაციის განხორციელებას. ანუ ყველა ასე ვთქვათ ასპექტი, რომ გავითვალისწინოთ დეცენტრალიზაციის, მაგალითად პოლიტიკური ასპექტი, ხო? ამ მიმართულებით საკმაოდ წინ ვართ წასულები, ჩვენ გვყავს არჩევითი მერები 2014 წლიდან, მანამდე ჩვენ city manager-ის მოდელზე ვიყავით და საკრებულო ნიშნავდა, ასე ვთქვათ, მერებს და დღეს უკვე აღმასრულებელი ხელისუფლების მეთაური ან თვითონ წარმომადგენლობა ისა აღმასრულებელი ორგანო მერი არის პირდაპირ არჩეული. გვყავს ასევე საკრებულო და მოქალაქეებს აბსოლუტურად შესაძლებლობა აქვთ, რომ დამოუკიდებლად მიიღონ გადაწყვეტილებები და ფორმირება გააკეთონ ადგილობრივი თვითმმართველობის. ფისკალური მიმართულებითაც გარკვეულწილად აი DGG-ს ნაწილმა შედარებით მეტი თავისუფლება მოიტანა ფინანსური თავისუფლება, თუმცა პანდემიის პირობებში მაინც ეს ეფექტიც რეალურად იკარგება, რაც ჰქონდა. მაგრამ აი ეს რაც შეეხება თვითონ ტერიტორიულ ზომას, აი ხა მე წეღანო ანგარიშობდი, მაგალითად აი პოლონეთში, ხო? 2477 მუნიციპალიტეტის დონეზე ერთეული არსებობს. და ეს ნიშნავს, რომ დაახლოებით ერთ მუნიციპალიტეტში საშუალოდ ცხოვრობს 15000 ადამიანი. საქართველოში მუნიციპალური დონე, ასეთი არ არსებობს. რეალურად მუნიციპალურ დონეზე ჩვენ ის ზომა რაც გვაქვს, სადაც ჩვენთან დაახლოებით 55000 ადამიანზე მეტი ცხოვრობს ერთ მუნიციპალურ ერთეულში და ჩვენ რომ ავიღოთ აი აღმოსავლეთ ევროპული ან ცენტრალური ევროპის მუნიციპალიტეტები, ნახავთ რომ მათი ზომა და ქართული მუნიციპალიტეტების ზომა არის აბსოლუტურად 3-ჯერ 4-ჯერ უფრო დიდია საქართველოში ეს ზომა
Okay, so I will just mention that Mr. Kokakyaburadze is an executive director of the management system.
He's back now.
So, yeah, okay.
And now away again. I'm sorry.
Okay, we can give a word to, yeah, I think he's back. He is muted.
ბატონო კოკა მიკროფონი გაქვთ გამართული.
ჩემი ხმა არის მოდი. ეხა ისმის ხო ჩემი ხმა?
კი, ახლა ისმის.
ერთ წინადებაში დავასრულებ. და ხო, ეს ამის თქმა მინდოდა რომ რეალურად ჩვენ რომ მოქალაქეებს მივცეთ საშუალება რომ აირჩიონ და პოლიტიკური თავისუფლება, ასე ვთქვათ, ანუ პოლიტიკური დეცენტრალიზაცია განვახორციელოთ, ასევე ადმინისტრაციული დეცენტრალიზაციაც რომ განვახორციელოთ ეფექტურად და ფისკალური ნაწილით რომ მოვაგვაროთ ამ საკითხის, რეალურად თუ არ მოგვარდება მუნიციპალური ზომის საკითხი და ქვეყანა რეალურად ორდონიან მმართველობაზე არ გადავა ადრე თუ გვიან, მანამ ამ დეცენტრალიზაციის ამ სამივე ასპექტის განხორციელებას ეკარგება მთავარი შინაარსი. ანუ სად უნდა განხორციელდეს დეცენტრალიზაცია? იმ დონეზე, სადაც დღეს ჩვენ გვაქვს თვითმმართველობა, თუ ამ დონეზე განხორციელდება, ხშირ შემთხვევაში ეს ვერ მოგცემს იმ ეფექტს, რასაც ჩვენ ველოდებით დეცენტრალიზაციიდან. და აქვე აღნიშნავდი, რომ 2020-25 წლების დეცენტრალიზაციის სტრატეგიის შემუშავებაში, რომელშიც ასევე მეც ვიყავი მონაწილე ამ სხვადასხვა სამუშაო ჯგუფების, ეს სტრატეგია ამ საკითხს აბსოლუტურად გვერდს უვლის და პირდაპირ არ ამბობს, მაგრამ შინაარსით ეს სტრატეგია, ასე ვთქვათ, ამიდის იმ მიმართულებით, რომ ის 2025 წლამდე, მოკლედ, ჩვენი სისტემა არ დაუბრუნდება ამის განხილვას, ანუ რა ტერიტორიული ერთეულები გვაქვს, ამ ტერიტორიულ ერთეულებზე დავტოვებთ. და ერთ პატარა მაგალითს მოვიყვანდი ასევე, დეცენტრალიზაციის უფლებამოსილებების გადაცემის ნაწილში, როცა მიდიოდა განხილვა 2019-ში, 2018-ში და ამ სამუშაო ჯგუფებში მუშაობდით, სახელმწიფო, ანუ სამინისტროებს, რომელსაც ჰქონდათ დავალებული, რომ მოეტანათ წინადადებები, რაზე იყვნენ თანახმა, ანუ რა უფლებამოსილებების გადაცემაზე იქნებოდნენ თანახმა, ერთადერთი სამინისტრო, რომელმაც მოიტანა თავისი წინადადება, იყო სოფლის მეურნეობის სამინისტრო, რომელმაც თქვა, რომ თუ ამდეხანს მუნიციპალიტეტებს შეეძლოთ ბუნებიდან 3 მგელის ამოღება, ჩვენ მზად ვართ, რომ მათ გადავცეთ 10 მგელის ამოღების უფლება. ეს იყო ძირითადი ერთი მთავარი, ესე ვთქვათ, რაღაცა შედეგი, რომელიც მოიტანა სამინისტროებმა ამ მაგიდასთან განსახილვად. და რეალურად ეს აჩვენებს ძალიან კარგად იმ დამოკიდებულებად და ყველა დანარჩენი სამინისტრო ამბობდა, რომ ჩვენ იმდენად კარგად ვახორციელებთ ამ უფლებამოსილებებს, მისი გადაცემა ადგილზე გამოიწვევს ქვეყნის დაღუპვას და დაქუცმაცებას. მოკლედ ამ სიტუაციაში ვართ და ამ სიტუაციაში ვცდილობთ ამ ყველაფრის გაკეთებას და გარდა ბატონი გიამ რაც და საკითხი დააყენა, ამ საკითხებს მე დავუმატებდი მუნიციპალური ზომის საკითხს და ძალიან კარგი იქნებოდა თუ ასე ვთქვათ, ვიმსჯელებდით იმაზე, რომ მუნიციპალურ დონეზე გამსხვილების მიმართულებით ტენდენცია ხომ არ ამცირებს დემოკრატიის ხარისხს ადგილზე და გადაწყვეტილების მიღების პროცესში მოქალაქეთა მონაწილეობის შესაძლებლობებს და როგორ ურჩევდით თქვენ, ასე ვთქვათ, საქართველოს, როგორ დაუახლოვდეს აი საშუალო სტატისტიკურ ევროპულ ზომას, როგორც მუნიციპალურ ზომაზე, ისევე რეგიონის დონეზე. და ორდონიანი თვითმმართველობა ამდენად ფიქრობთ, რომ ესე ვთქვათ, იქნებოდა ჩვენი ზომის ქვეყნისთვის კარგი გამოსავალი იმისთვის, რომ დეცენტრალიზაციამ თავისი დადებითი შედეგები მოიტანოს. მადლობა.
Thank you. And Stanislav, I will
მადლობა. სიტყვას
Mrs. Nino Loladze, who was very much involved in our report development and who also reviewed our report.
Yeah, Nina,
მოგესალმებით, ძალიან დიდი მადლობა, რომელმეც საშუალება შეხვედრაში მონაწილეობა მიმიღო. ძალიან დიდი მადლობა პოლონელ ექსპერტებს, მათი გამოცდილების გაზიარებისთვის. ძალიან საინტერესო იყო, მე ვიცნობდი თქვენს კვლევას, მაგრამ ახლა კიდევ ამ ფორმატში გაცნობა საინტერესო იყო და მეც შეიძლება ითქვას, რომ ახალს არაფერს ვიტყვი და გავაგრძელებ ბატონი გიას და ბატონი კოკას დაწყებულ აზრს იმასთან დაკავშირებით, რომ დეცენტრალიზაცია, რომელიც ეხლა ახალი ფაზა მიმდინარეობს ჩვენ ქვეყანაში, პირველ რიგში საჭიროებს პოლიტიკურ ნებას, რომ ის მართლა განხორციელდეს და რეალურად იყოს დეცენტრალიზაცია და ეს არ იყოს მხოლოდ ფორმალური იმისთვის, რომ უბრალოდ გვჭირდება დეცენტრალიზაციაზე საუბარი. რამდენიმე ფაზა გავიარეთ ქვეყანაში, რაც დამოუკიდებლობა მოვიპოვეთ და შეიძლება ითქვას, რომ მუდმივად ვცვლიდით, ქონდა ორდონიანი თვითმმართველობა, გადავედით ერთდონიან თვითმმართველობაზე. ეხლა შეიძლება ვფიქრობთ კიდევ და უბრალოდ კოკამ დააყენა ეს საკითხი, რომ სწორედ ჩვენი მუნიციპალიტეტების ზომა, რომელიც ევროპაში მეორე ადგილზე ვარ ზომის მიხედვით, საჭიროებს იმას, რომ გადაიხედოს და ის ნაბიჯი, რომელიც 2014-ში იქნა გადადგმული და მოხდა თვითმმართველი ქალაქების და თვითმმართველი თემების გაყოფა შემდეგ გაერთიანება, ეს კიდევ ერთხელ მიინიშნებს იმას, რომ ცოტა გააზრებული არა გვაქვს, როდესაც ჩვენ ვიწყებთ პროცესს, კარგად შესწავლილი, კარგად გაანალიზებული, სად გვინდა რომ მივიდეთ და ჩვენ ხშირად გვაქვს ხოლმე რომ რომელიმე ქვეყნის მოდელის გადმოღებას, როდესაც რაიმე რეფორმა მიმდინარეობს, ხოლმე განსაკუთრებით დეცენტრალიზაციის ფორმატში, საუბარია ხოლმე რომ აი ამ ქვეყანაში ეს მოდელი მუშაობს, ამ ქვეყანაში ეს მოდელი მუშაობს, მე თვითონ ვცდილობთ მოვარგოთ ჩვენს რეალობას და მაინც აცდენილი გამოდის რაღაცეები და ისე არ არის ჩვენი რეფორმები ჩამოყალიბებული, რომ რეალობაში მართლა მოგვიტანოს დეცენტრალიზაცია. ერთ-ერთი მთავარი საკითხი, რაზეც ბატონო გიამაც ისაუბრა და კოკამაც ეს იყო ფინანსური ნაწილი და ფინანსური დეცენტრალიზაცია ზოგადად განაპირობებს, ერთია გადავეცით მუნიციპალიტეტებს უფლებამოსილები, მაგრამ ეს უფლებამოსილები თუ ფინანსურად არ არის გამყარებული, თუ მას არ აქვს რესურსი ამის განხორციელებისთვის, შეიძლება ძალიან ბევრი უფლებამოსილება გადავცეთ და დღეს არსებული ხშირ შემთხვევაში დღეს რაც კი აქვს მუნიციპალიტეტს უფლებამოსილები, მასაც კი ვერ ასრულებს ბოლომდე და ინკლუზიურად, რომ ყველა სერვისი მიეწოდებოდეს მოსახლეობას და სრული დაფარვა კონდეს თავის მუნიციპალიტეტში სერვისების, მხოლოდ იმიტომ, რომ არ აქვს ის მთავარი, ეს არის ფინანსური რესურსები არ გააჩნია და ბატონმა გიამაც ისაუბრა, ეს არის ადამიანური კაპიტალი, რომელიც მუნიციპალიტეტში მუნიციპალიტეტში კვალიფიციური საჯარო მოხელეები, კარგად გააზრებული პოლიტიკური თანამდებობის პირები, რომლებიც იაზრებენ გრძელვადიან პერსპექტივაში, სად უნდა წავიდეს მათი მუნიციპალიტეტი, როგორ უნდა განვითარდეს, რას უნდა მივაღწიოთ და ეხლა ზუსტად დეცენტრალიზაციის სტრატეგიის ფარგლებში მიმდინარეობს მუშაობა და მე მაინც მჯერა, რომ არიან ადამიანები, რომლებიც ამ პროცესში ჩართული არიან, არა იმიტომ, რომ უბრალოდ ეს საჭიროება და მოდა, არამედ მართლა გული შესტკივა თვითმმართველობაზე და მართლა ფიქრობენ, რომ და მართლა ბევრია ეს ასეთი ადამიანები, რომელიც ცდილობს თვითმმართველობების გაძლიერებაზე იმუშაოს. ეს აქსიომაა უკვე, რომ ძლიერი თვითმმართველობა განაპირობებს ქვეყნის სტაბილურობასა და განვითარებას და ხშირად არის ხოლმე ცოტა გადაუხვია, მაგრამ ხშირად არის პოლიტიკოსები წინასარჩენოდ ამ ლოზუნგს ძალიან კარგად იყენებენ, რომ ძლიერი თვითმმართველობა, ძლიერი ქვეყანა, მაგრამ მაძლიერებთ თუ არა ამ თვითმმართველობებს, ცოტა აქ გვაქვს პრობლემა და გამოსასწორებელი მიმართულებით სამუშაო გასაწევი. და რაც მთავარია, ფინანსურ ნაწილს შევეხები, მე მაინც ფინანსების მიმართულებით მუშაობ ხოლმე თვითმმართველობების საკითხებზე. კოკამაც აღნიშნა DGG-ის ნაწილი, რომელიც დეცენტრალიზაციის რეფორმას ცოტა წინ უსწრებდა, სანამ დაიწყეს სტრატეგიის შემუშავებამდე რამდენიმე ხნით ადრე მოხდა ამის დანერგვა და განხორციელება. ერთ-ერთი წინ გადადგმული ნაბიჯი იყო, თუმცა აი ამ პანდემიამ აჩვენა, რომ DGG, რომელიც ძალიან კარგი იყო და ქვეყნის ეკონომიკურ განვითარებას მიაბეს მუნიციპალიტეტების შემოსავლები, აღმოჩნდა, რომ პირიქით უარყოფითი შედეგი ჰქონდა გუშინ მაგალითად ერთ-ერთმა მუნიციპალიტეტმა გითხრა 5 მილიონიანი კლება აქვს DGG-ის გამო ბიუჯეტში. რადგან სახელმწიფო დონეზე არ შევიდა DGG, მათაც დაკნათ. ამიტომ კიდევ უფრო დასაფიქრებელია, რომ თუ 2019-ში ვამბობთ, რომ აი კარგია DGG, თუ მუდმივად ზარდი იქნება ჩვენ ეკონომიკური წინსვლა გვაქვს მუნიციპალიტეტის მეტი ფული გაუჩნდებათ, დასაფიქრებელი გახდა, რომ მუნიციპალიტეტებს სხვა რესურსები გადაეცეთ დეცენტრალიზაციის, ფისკალური დეცენტრალიზაციისთვის. იგივე მე არ მინახავ ჩამოშალო რომ აი ზამენცა შემოსავლო გადასახადის რაღაც წილი რაღაც იგივე ამ თემებზე ძალიან ბევრს საუბრობენ ხოლმე, მაგრამ საფიქრებელია რომ მუნიციპალიტეტები უნდა გაძლიერდეს მათი საკუთარი შემოსავლების წილი და არ იყოს დამოკიდებული სახელმწიფო ტრანსფერებზე და გრანტებზე და კატასტროფა ხდება ამ მომენტისთვის, იმიტომ რომ მუნიციპალიტეტების უმრავლესობას ინფრასტრუქტურული ბოლო პერიოდის ახლა გადავხედებ ბიუჯეტები შევიდა ბიუჯეტები შევიდა მაშინ საკრებულოებში და მუნიციპალიტეტებს ინფრასტრუქტურული პროექტების განხორციელებისთვის თანხებიც კი არ აქვთ გათვალისწინებული თავის ბიუჯეტში. მიმაპატიჟებს ამის გამო. პატარა ძაღლა მომიყვანეს და მოკლედ რის თქმაც მინდოდა მე მგონი არსი მაინც გასაგებია. და იმედი მაქვს რომ აი ამ ესეთი შეხვედრები და ექსპოლონელი ექსპერტების ხარდაჭერა ძალიან დაგვეხმარება და მათი რეკომენდაციებიც და მე ვიცი რომ დეცენტრალიზაციის სტრატეგიის ნაწილაკის პოლონელი ექსპერტები აქტიურად იყვნენ ხოლმე ჩართული. მადლობა დიდი.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that
დიდი მადლობა. Hazmik მაიწია ხელი, როგორც დავინახეთ.
Thank you very much. My name is Hazmik Grigoryan. I am from Armenia, PhD student at Dublin City University and also research fellow with ACGRC. And I have kind of a comment, but more question to Salome and Gvansa. And I have seen, for example, in Kakheti region, Signagi and Lobota. And my question is about how this development went and how decentralized are the municipalities. So does it mean that central government gave more powers to these municipalities to build infrastructure, or the relations works the other way around? And the second question, you mentioned that there is the self-governing cities such as Mtskheta and Tel Aviv. So can you clarify what does it mean, self-governing status, and what is the difference? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gvansa, Salome, could you reply? Because as I understand, it's a question to you.
Maybe I'll briefly reply with this Kakheti example, because we had Kakheti case in the crisis responses and under the crisis responses chapter. And the reality was, when we talked with the representative of the Kakheti municipality, that this pandemic was so, of course, all the pandemics are unexpected, but the situation was so overwhelming that they actually had to deal it on the local level by themselves, because the central government didn't have capacity to, access to all the municipalities and give the guidance. So they were by their own, and that's why they created this regional and the local hotline along with the national one. So as soon as the local population needed some information or some assistance, they would directly call to the region and not to the national level hotline. It was one thing. And as for the infrastructure, Kakheti is known with its, we have the biggest hotels there because it's one of the most attractive touristic destination in Georgia. So they use this infrastructure for this COVID pandemic. And they made this COVID hotels, or whatever they call it, and they assigned individual doctors to each hotel, which worked really well during this first wave. And these people had this kind of the safety, feeling of the safety, because they were doctors available, there were this hotline available, and it made it so successful during the first wave, of course, because now we have different situation now. Maybe as for the governing city, Salome will address this issue.
So I mentioned this in my presentation that in 2017, like 7 cities lost the status of self-governing cities. So it was created in 2014 in order to give them more independence. So the whole idea, to briefly comment on that, is that they have more power to act independently if they have the self-governing status. So if not, then they are in more control from the central government.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like just to provide some my feedback to stakeholders, because it was very interesting, and after some comments, I just came to my mind some idea, maybe on the next project, but decentralization of countries with sensitive regions. And I mean, originally I'm from Ukraine, from the very, very eastern part of Ukraine. And well, decentralization is can be, and as it is, it's a key to prosperity of each region and each local societies. Yes, and I'm fully aware what are you talking about in terms of Georgia, because a lot of countries, also Ukraine and, for example, Spain, Germany, France, also have such problems and such sensitive regions. And of course, if there is no external impact and external influence on the regions, on the specific regions, in ideal world, yeah, decentralization should be the key to prosperity of the society. But for example, in case of Spain, we have a couple of regions that also strive to be more independent, yeah, and I'm fully aware about the situation in Georgia. But well, if, for example, in future, we will try to just study and specify some key aspects of decentralization of countries with such sensitive regions. It would be, I think it would be very helpful for many countries, not only for Georgia or for Ukraine, because decentralization is not about like leaving a region and just let the region govern itself. But it's in case, for example, of Poland, we had a flood this summer, yeah, and in the guidebook we described this case study. And in Poland we have quite decentralized regions, yeah, authorities, and it's very interesting that many regions, even Warsaw city, has ceased to deal with this flooding for a very small town in the east of Poland. And I think decentralization is also about solidarity and about sharing some values. And of course, we should, as I mentioned yesterday, it's impossible to transfer, 400% experience of Poland in decentralization to, for example, to Armenia or Georgia. But there is some specific features and some aspects that can be, adapted by these countries. And for sure, we should take into account population, the size of cities, level of, for example, corruption, interconnections between local authorities and residents. But there is no, I think there is no the similar decentralization in any country. Each country has specific features of decentralization, and I'm fully aware about some external security issues for Georgia and for Armenia also. But I think it will be good in the future to study this issue of decentralization and take some good examples of decentralization of countries with sensitive regions. Yeah. Any other comments? Okay. I think we can start. We already started to answer questions, and well, I start with a question that we received in question and answers, and I would kindly ask you to check if we have any questions at Facebook. Then just please translate and transfer here. But question on some tools that Georgian authorities can apply and can use that we have in Poland. Well, I started and then give a floor to Agnieszka, because I know that Agnieszka also have something to say about this. Well, I already started to answer this question about transferring some experience, but as I heard, there is no approach to crisis response in Georgia, and I think, well, transferring this experience and approach of 4 phases to any issue or crisis that Poland elaborated can be very helpful, because it doesn't matter what kind of what size of city you have, or what kind of power division between the local authorities or central authorities. This approach can be very, very helpful, and I think first of all it should be transferred from special services. I mean that primarily dealing with crisis, and secondly by local governments, because they manage in these situations. Second, I think the clue and the key to successful operation of local governments is funding and absorption of some external funds. I know that there are a lot of obstacles and problems with dealing with some external funds, but I think Polish local governments can share this experience, and I believe that Georgia and Armenia will be in future closer to the European Union, or will be a part of the European Union. But it's very essential experience of dealing with external funds, and it allows local governments to implement some bottom-up initiatives. And on the one hand, it improves personal qualifications of people that work in local governments. On the other hand, it improves cooperation and communication between local authorities, because as you see in my presentation, consultations and co-decision is like very key elements of functioning of local governments. And I think these 2 aspects can be for sure be transferred to Georgia and Armenia, and can be like applied to your realities. Agnieszka, would you like to add something?
Yes, of course. Yeah, thank you very much. I will be super brief. It must be stated clearly that there is no one-size-fits-all approach. We can demonstrate, we can show our experience, and we can invite other countries to look at it, and then, depending on the given situation, adjust the tools and methods to the actual situation. I was listening to the comments and was fascinated, because actually we took a step backwards and looked at the political environment in terms of whether the decentralization and establishment of the local government units is kind of politically possible. And I have to underline it, that it was the right momentum in Poland to do so, to proceed with decentralization, because of the political change that happened after 1989. And again, I was fascinated to hear that, for example, there is such a misunderstanding, I would say, on the side of different agents, such as, for example, the church, which was mentioned by one of the speakers. That leads me to the conclusion that when you introduce such a great and profound reform in a country, you need the agents of change. And in case of Poland, it was the solidarity movement. I'm sure that you know the history. I didn't mention it during my presentation, but actually Solidarity won the first local elections in 1990. They got around, I think it was 47% of the total number of the mandates. You know, it started like 10 years and even earlier, but at least 10 years before the first elections took place. Again, this is a long time process that needs the proper momentum to happen. And it is, I would say, in the hands of wise politicians not to lose this momentum. And again, the role of the agents of change is very, very important. Also in terms of spreading the information and convincing the unconvinced in local communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just would like to emphasize that, well, it's a very long process, and I'm very happy that we are doing this project, and I really do hope that we will have like continuation in some aspects and of this project in the future, because it's very important. And well, I think that it's very hard to change views and opinions of people and, for example, even authorities to some things like co-decision or consultations, because it's very long process, and such like initiatives like introducing some very small tools one by one will help to change some you know, some minds, and like provide more comprehensive understanding of what is decentralization. Okay, do we have any other questions, or we can continue to talk and to discuss maybe some questions or some issues?
No, we don't have additional questions on Facebook.
Okay, and stakeholders, do you have any like additional maybe comments or feedbacks? Because it's very useful for us. I think this section and this time is very, very useful. And first part of the this conference was just to present in some our insights, yeah. And for us, it's very important. Yeah.
Mr. Koka has a question.
Yeah.
So we talked about the municipal level, on the city self-governance and community and village self-government, and to unify, so to say. So in the country, we have nowadays 64 municipalities and only 5 self-governing cities. So the cities that have their own mayor and their own budget. So we have only 5 cities like that. But we have around 50 city-type settlements that are unified with some villages. So what is, in this case, your experience or your opinion? We have been discussing this very actively in Georgia, that cities do not need self-governance status. For example, a city that has 20,000 inhabitants, for example, Ozurgeti, Gori, Zugdidi. When we have a city, for example, Poti, that has self-governing city, and the Zugdidi that might have even larger population, but doesn't have this status. I would like to know, how do you think about this? Our government has been saying if the village and the city are together, and we see that it's okay. So when we are planning the budget, 80% of is spent on solving the problems, but 94% is only using the 20%. So basically, the budget is divided unfairly, basically, not according to the population. And in these municipalities that are unified, that have, for example, cities that have 20,000 population and plus 50 communities, for example, settlements that in each can be 1,000 or 500 people. These communities are represented by one majority parliament member, and then at the end they were with only 2 or 3 positions, basically, and also the cities had only one representative in this political body. So when the European Council experts were coming to Georgia, we have the city has one majority, for example, and each village has each majority representative. How can this unified council manage to spend, one majority can spend 80% on its own city, and the 20% is only spent on the villages? So we have this issue, and it shows basically, and it's a diagnosis of our system, basically, that the political decision makers are not the councils that manage these municipalities, but the political parties in these councils, especially the ruling party, political assembly that meets in Tbilisi, makes some decisions, and then in the regions they create only echo of these political decisions. So it's not really made in the regions themselves, but by the ruling party.
Okay, Agnieszka, do you have a clear answer for this? Because, well, this is about discrepancies in financing of different levels of self-governments, and also it's quite political sensitive issue. I mean, this is the same situation in Armenia and the same situation in Georgia, and I think it's very hard to reach this perfect situation when every self-government will be happy with the resources they possess and right they have. But well, I'm not good in internal political situation in Georgia, but well, the situation is quite simple as in Armenia, and well, striving to have more decentralized budgets and resources can avoid this situation. But well, frankly, I don't have clear answer for this, because well, this is traditional situation in many countries, and to overcome this, it should be profound reform, not only in public administration, but in other areas of political management. Agnieszka, what do you think about this?
Yes, okay, I'm very sorry, but the question was very long and there were so many details that I actually didn't grasp the problem. So maybe one of the solutions could be if you could just ask this question in writing,
he
or
says
just
that
a
he
short
will
and
say more concretely or more
yeah,
shortly.
okay, thank you.
Okay. So, first of all, the question is, to what extent do you believe it is correct when city and villages are together in one municipal unit and they have a common budget. This is the main content, the main sense of this question. And second of all, in our case, the main problem is that this municipalities doesn't divide fairly, equally the budget between the city and the villages because the political representation is unequal. So the question is, do you think it is correct when a city and villages are together and managing together in one municipal unit?
Okay, so I guess that the main problem is that the city has a stronger position and takes basically the funding to support their own needs. And we are talking here about huge cities versus very small villages. Is that correct?
Yes, but not from the central budget, but from in one municipal unit they are together. So the village and the city do not have their own municipality separately. So they are together in one municipal unit and they have common budget.
Yeah, of course. Of course, it sounds like a very demanding and complicated situation. In Poland, it was partly solved by creating kind of associations of small villages so that they are together and they are not, they don't have to confront with this bigger player, I mean the bigger city. Small villages, they kind of share the budgets depending on the population. This is also not the issue of, you know, kind of political play between those villages who are members of the partly solved. In Poland, what you're saying, this situation is it's kind of not healthy because it has very strong development impact on the villages, and this is what I can say now without knowing, grasping too many details.
Okay, I think it's quite complicated and comprehensive questions. Yeah, well, I think we did a good job during today's conference, and we will share a guidebook and infographics to all participants of this conference. We for sure will keep in touch with all of you, specifically with our partner from Georgia. And well, thank you very much for your time, for your efforts, and it was very interesting conference. And well, can I kindly ask you to share a link to very simple 3 questions? If you just be so kind to answer these 3 simple questions, it would be very good, because it helps us to estimate and evaluate our work and to make more perfect our work in future. And I kindly ask someone from Georgian partner to share this link in a chat.
We will share it in a second.
Okay, just 3 simple questions, no names, no emails, just anonymous questions. And we can finish our conference.
Yeah, Ninuta is going to share it now.
Kwanza, do you have the link? Because for some reason my Zoom doesn't let me go to other page. And as a host, it might be a problem.
Before she shares, I would like to thank you, everybody, to our Polish partners, Armenian colleague, who expressed her collegiality and stayed here during the entire conference. And special thanks to our experts for their input. And comms team, of course.
Okay, I see that Agnieszka already shared. Thank you very much, Agnieszka.
Thank you, Agnieszka.
Well, please just click on this link and answer these 3 simple questions. Well, officially, we can finish and close this very interesting conference. I wish you a good evening and stay healthy and in a good shape.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.